Welcome to Everyday Simple Somatics, a podcast dedicated to helping you find healing through your body's natural wisdom. I'm Dr. Christine Baker, and I'll be your host. You know that heavy feeling that takes over when you're feeling like you're not enough, or that desire to kind of disappear and get small when you've done something that feels embarrassing, or maybe even that voice inside that tells you you're not worthy of love and connection. That's going to be shame. And shame is one of the most challenging emotions that we experience, and it lives deeply in our bodies. And so today we're going to be talking all about how shame lives in our bodies, why it's such a complicated emotion to try to resource, and a very practical tool for how you might work with your shame from a somatic approach. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Dr. Christine Baker. I have been a trauma therapist for over 13 years. I am also a somatic experiencing practitioner, which just means that I'm a person that believes strongly that trauma is not just something that has happened to us, like an event, but it is the imprint of that event that is left on our body, particularly our nervous system. And that is actually the catalyst for this podcast. I really believe that the body needs to be brought along in the trauma recovery journey. And so I wanted to create a resource that was accessible, simple. You know, these episodes, I try to keep them 10 or 15 minutes or under, just so that people could begin those baby steps of bringing their body along in their mental health journey. If you are new to nervous system regulation and somatic healing, I'd love to invite you to the first 10 episodes of our podcast. I call them the Essential Foundations. It's just kind of the basics of the nervous system, all the terms that you need to know before you start getting into our weekly drops, which are episodes where we tackle a specific mental health symptom or relational issue with a very specific somatic skill. So if that sounds interesting to you, or today's topic sounds interesting to you, I'd love to invite you to like and subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform you are currently watching or listening. All of those little clicks really do help support other people finding these resources as well. Okay, so what is shame? I heard this distinction when I was in grad school, and it's always been really helpful for me. So shame is fundamentally different than guilt. So guilt says, I did something bad, like that was not a good choice, while shame says, I am bad. And that thing that I did is just an example of my badness, right? And that distinction matters because shame keeps us stuck in this loop of self-judgment that can feel really impossible to escape. Dr. Brené Brown actually has a great TED Talk. I'll link it in the show notes about shame. And so I really encourage you to listen to that. But her research talks about how shame thrives in secrecy, silence, and judgment. And so when we bring it into awareness with compassion instead of judgment, it actually begins to lose its power on us. And so let me tell you a little bit about what's happening in our body and our nervous system when we are experiencing shame. So shame creates a really distinctive pattern in our nervous system. It often triggers a dorsal vagal response, which is going to be more of that like shutdown, dissociation, or collapse. We see it quite often. I notice this in myself and in my clients through things like rounded shoulders, downcast eyes, maybe even like some restriction in our breathing. And that physical collapse reinforces the emotional experience that we're having because our bodies are literally, they're doing what? Making us smaller, right? And it kind of mirrors that desire to like disappear and get small and I'm not worthy, right? All the things that shame kind of evokes, our body does it. And shame is particularly challenging to work with because it often developed in childhood as a survival strategy, which means that it is like wired in some of our really deep survival patterns. And unlike other emotions that can tend to like move through us, shame can often create a frozen, kind of isolating experience that makes us feel like fundamentally flawed and unworthy of connection. And the problem is, connection is the very thing we need to heal the shame. And so that paradox is really what makes shame such a persistent experience for people because the emotion itself blocks the access to the resource that we would need to help us get out of it. And so, because shame creates both an emotional isolation and a physical collapse simultaneously, our approach somatically needs to address both aspects at once, which is why the exercise that we're going to do today, which we can just call the unfold practice, combines gentle physical expansion with connection through self-touch and compassionate awareness, which creates this multi-layered resource that speaks directly to what shame has taken away. I'm so excited about this practice for you guys because I feel like this way that we're going to care for our body when we are experiencing shame is offering our body exactly what it needs in that moment. So here's how it works. We're going to start by just noticing where shame lives in our body. And the easiest way you can do that is I want you to think about an experience you've had recently where you were slightly embarrassed, not the most embarrassing experience of your life, slightly embarrassed. And when you think about that memory, I want you to just notice what you feel in your body. So some common spots that people experience shame could be like heaviness in the chest, tension in the throat, kind of that dropping sensation in the core, the belly. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to notice that without trying to change anything. Okay. Once we've kind of identified where that place is, you're going to place one hand gently where you feel that sensation most strongly. And so for me, that's definitely like the collapse in the chest. And so this second part of the intervention offers immediate support through touch, which helps counter shame's isolating effect. Okay, so that's part 2. And then part 3 is I want you to just notice as you offer that support, does the body begin to naturally move out of the collapse? And so if my collapse is like shoulders down, kind of head downcast, when I offer that support to my chest with my hand, do I start to like naturally kind of instinctively on my own without even trying, unfold up, shoulders begin to roll back, chest begins to rise, things like that. Does that start to happen naturally? And if so, let it. That's beautiful. That's like your body's resilience. Okay. If it doesn't, that is okay. It is okay. This is something new that we're trying, right? And so what we're going to do is we're just going to offer it the tiniest bit of support and encouragement. So what I want you to do is wherever you're kind of holding, you'll just offer like small, gentle movements in the opposite direction of the collapse. So for instance, like I'm holding my chest, right? So I may just like offer a little gentle push up, very gentle, and just notice, like I just moved like 2 centimeters and now I'm noticing what happens inside. And you'll just do that very slowly, supporting your body and unfolding, coming out of the collapse, right? So if your shoulders are rounded forward, maybe your hands just like gently are moving them backwards. If your head is down, maybe your hand is on your chin, just gently moving it up again. Not forceful corrections, right? They're just invitations. And so as you are making these gentle invitations to your nervous system, I want you to add a phrase of self-compassion. So maybe something like, this too is part of being human, or I'm learning and growing and doing the best I can. So that is what we will do. Are you guys ready to try it together? All right. So go ahead and get comfortable wherever you are. Maybe you're sitting in a chair or lying in a bed, whatever feels most comfortable. And I want you to just notice whatever's supporting you for a moment. So I've got the chair under my seat, the floor under my feet. And just take in that support for a moment. And then whenever you're ready, I'd love to invite you to just bring up that memory of something slightly embarrassing. So like we said, on a scale of 0 to 10, like a 2 or a 3, slightly embarrassing. And I want you to just notice what happens in your body as you bring up that memory. So for me, I like had heat rush to my face and then there's some downcast eyes, shoulders are beginning to round. So just notice it happen. Not trying to change anything, just letting it happen. And then whenever you're ready, I'd love to invite you to just place a hand on the part of your body that feels like it needs that support. And so for me, it actually was more my head this time. So I'm actually going to put my hand under my chin. And as you offer that support, just notice if your body tries to naturally unfold or if it needs a little support from your hand, just little micro movements to help your body kind of unfold. So just notice for a moment. Yeah, I can kind of feel it naturally happening, like my eyes wanting to go up. And so if you're supporting the unfold or if it's just happening on its own, if it feels okay, let's just say out loud, this too is part of being human. This too is part of being human. This too is part of being human. And just notice what it's like. Take as long as you need with that until it feels like you're in a more upright position. Your body's able to take up the space that it needs. Beautiful work, guys. I know this is a very tender emotion and space to be entering into, especially in a podcast. I hope that this intervention felt gentle enough to support those parts of you that may be holding shame, and also resourcing. It's something that you can use whenever you need it. And remember, working with shame is not about forcing it away. Like, oh, I shouldn't feel that way. That's so dumb. I shouldn't have even been embarrassed. Like, we don't go there, right? It's actually about creating enough space and safety to hold that shame with compassion. And that's what helps it settle, right? So that is actually all I have for today. So I'd love to tell you a little bit about next week's show. We are going to be talking about something very common for trauma survivors, which is decision paralysis. And so I wonder if you've ever had that experience of like feeling like choices become really overwhelming and paralyzing instead of empowering. And so if that's you, I've definitely had that experience. I'll share a somatic approach that can help you kind of cut through some of that mental fog that can exist when we're in that decision paralysis place, so that you can reconnect with your body's natural decision-making process. There is a way that we can bring our body along with us in decisions, in all decisions, big and small. And so I'd love to teach you that. And so that's what we'll be talking about next week. If that sounds interesting to you, or if this week's episode has been supportive to you, I'd love to invite you to like and subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform you are watching or listening. If you are interested in digging a little deeper into some of these concepts, I'd love to invite you to the Somatic Wellness Collective. This is a monthly subscription learning community where we offer really practical interventions for supporting your nervous system. Lots of live classes, on-demand classes. You have a integration workbook. It is such an incredible group of people caring for their nervous system. And I try to do it in a really affordable way so that this can be a resource that anyone can jump into. So if that's something you're interested in, there will be information about that in the show notes as well. And so as we close, remember, your body has innate wisdom. We just have to learn how to listen to it. And that's what I'm here for. I'll see you next week.